Well, boys and girls, we're taking a big L on the GSR motor today. I was working on to get more of it apart. I dropped my head off at the machine shop yesterday to get all my new parts put in it, my new valve stem seals, new valves, new springs, new retainers, new lost motion assembly, all the good stuff. So while it's at the machine shop, I was going to work on the motor just to replace some of the oil seals and stuff. Like I was going to replace the oil pump seals and the rear main seal and all those things while the head was off. Well, I took my oil pan off. As you can see, there's no oil pan. And when I took my oil pan off, there was some metal flakes in it. I think I've pretty much cleared most of them out, so you're not going to see anything. But just right down here by the drain plug, there is probably about a dozen little flaky looking pieces. Not really chunks of stuff, but just really thin flakes of stuff. So I thought for sure I must have a bearing that is, you know, going out and wearing real bad for some reason. And it's starting to lose some of that first layer of metal that's on them, because the bearings are usually made out of multiple different layers of metals. So I was like, I must have like a layer of a bearing that's starting to go out. Luckily I caught it early because this thing wasn't rod knocking or anything. But thus far, I do still have all the rods attached. I have gone and taken all the caps off of them just to look, and the bearings on the rods actually look really good. I mean, they obviously look used and have some wear in them, but none of them look like they are the cause of the flaking metal I had in the pan. Really the main bearings don't look awful either. I mean, you can see some wear on this one. You can see some wear on this one. This is I would say the worst looking one. It's got two decent little grooves worn in it, but I still don't know where the very thin flakes of metal came from, because I haven't found a bearing that just looks like it's been losing pieces. But it looks like we're going deeper into the motor than expected. I do still take my old pump apart, make sure that's not what's maybe tearing apart. I think maybe if you look in the pickup, you can see a few pieces in the pickup. Some of that is not metal, some of it's just like silicone, but some of that is a couple of flakes of metal pieces. I'm thinking about popping the rods and pistons out, and I may put B16 pistons in here, which according to my Google research, there's actually I think it's called Zeal Motorworks, has a calculator for B series engines, and you can choose if you're using this B series block with this B series head and all this, and it'll tell you basically what your compression ratio will be and a couple other bits of information. But if I put B16 pistons in this motor, it'll bump me up from about 10-to-1 compression to a little over 11-to-1 compression. So I think I'm gonna end up doing that while I'm in here, and then we'll end up having to probably obviously get an ECU and get tuned on it and whatnot. I would like to get a new set of headers too. I can't remember if I mentioned that already. I do want to get those Toyota style headers. From the research I've done, that seem to be the best header for mid-range power, and they do make good, decent high-range power as well. So I would like to get those headers, and then paired with that and the rest of my exhaust and the cold air intake, and I think I'm gonna put my Skunk 2 throttle body and intake manifold on this motor too, and my high compression pistons, we might be making decent power. But yeah, that's a quick little update on the motor. Like I said, crank bearings don't look awful, but they could use a replacement, and since I'm here, I might as well. And then, yep, I'm just gonna keep working on this motor and getting deeper and deeper until we get everything fixed. All right, guys, quick little update here on the Integra teardown. As you can see, my transmission is apart. This one is going to be for Frosty Tag. Gonna just go through a quick little rundown of kind of how to get to this point. So obviously, you have your transmission out of the vehicle. You're gonna set your transmission up. Obviously, this would still be bolted to that. You set your transmission up this way. You're gonna want to pull this plug out. I believe it's a 6mm Allen. I'm not sure, it could be bigger than that, but it is an Allen key drive. You want to pull that out because there is a snap ring in there that you're going to have to spread apart while you're pulling this off. There's a plug here and here. Your detent springs are behind there, so you want to go ahead and pull those two out. Pull your springs and the little balls at the end out. Don't lose those. Right here, I believe, is the there's going to be a bolt that goes all the way through there. Is this hole here? There's a bolt there, and that goes all the way through the case, and it goes into the reverse idler. It goes into there, so you have to remove that bolt. And then these are the studs and the bolt hole where the transmission mount bolts on. So that's kind of gives you a visual as to what side we're looking at. That bolt there goes into the reverse idler. And obviously here's your 3 bolt holes to where your torque mount bracket bolts to. I think I removed this bolt as well and I didn't have to, and I removed this one as well and I didn't have to. I hadn't taken one of these transmissions apart in a while, so I couldn't remember. But basically you just want this one, you want those two with your detent springs, and you want this one where the bolt goes in the reverse idler shaft. And like I said, the springs are behind there, so pull the springs out, pull your balls out, don't lose them. And then basically what you'll do is start prying the top case off from the lower case. There's a couple spots. You can see this tab kind of comes out here. There's a couple, and that's right about, I guess that's over here in this area. But there's a couple spots that give you some good places to get like a big flat head or a small pry bar and really start working it off, because the silicone's just going to kind of stick it down. Just got to kind of break the seal of that silicone, and then this should come loose. Basically you got to start just kind of wiggling it back and forth, get it kind of off, because it's got all kinds of shafts and stuff like it going into it, so it just gets stuck in a lot of places. So you literally just gotta like kind of wiggle it loose. But you will get to a point where this snap ring keeps you from coming out any further, because that snap ring actually goes into the groove on this bearing. So you have to get like some snap ring pliers or some needle nose pliers, put in between that snap ring and spread them outwards to release them out of that groove on this shaft. And then while you're spreading those out, you have to lift up on the case to get the snap ring past the bearing, and then you can release it. But that's what's nice to have a second set of hands, is to have somebody holding the snap ring open with some pliers while you're wiggling the top half of the case off. Then once you're in here, first thing you want to do is unbolt your shift selector. There's 3 bolts here. You can pop your shift selector out, and then there's 2 bolts here and here to move this little assembly that I guess that's like your reverse selector. That's just 2 bolts, like I said, there, here and here. Probably a good idea to go ahead and remove your vehicle speed sensor as well. That's on the back side of here, just one 10mm bolt, this long looking 10mm. Pull that out, speed sensor wheel, the vehicle speed sensor gear comes right out. I think after you remove these and you remove these, you can pretty much take your shafts and shift forks out as one unit. Basically you just want to take both your hands, just get one good grasp around all the gears and the shift forks, and just kind of, you can lift them all out as one big piece and just lay them off here to the side. And then in my case, I'm switching to a MFactory LSD. It comes with decent instructions. It comes with a package of shims, and it tells you, to put a shim on the diff and then press this bearing on, and then same with the other side, you put a shim on and then press the bearing on. The stock one comes with these like tapered bearings, but they make this ball bearing conversion for it, and it's supposed to be a lot better, so I went ahead and bought that ball bearing conversion. And when you buy the ball bearing conversion, you also have to tap out here where that bearing rides. There's a shim, and there's like a tapered piece that tapered bearing sets in. You have to knock out from the back side of the trans. On this side, you would have to take like a screwdriver and a hammer, or a punch and a hammer, something like that, and knock out this shim and this little tapered piece. There's one on that side, and there's one on this side in the lower case. One of them has 2 shims, one of them has 1 shim. You don't need those anymore. You completely discard those. And then you end up putting, as you can see, I have like a
snap ring looking shim in here. That comes with the ball bearing kit. They want you to put that in the top case, and it says this all in the instructions. And then you just have a shim under this bearing and a shim under the other bearing, and then you press the ball bearings on. You just swap your ring gear over. I put a little Loctite on my bolts, and I think it was like 74 foot-pounds. You have to tighten these two, and these are left-handed thread, not right-hand thread. As if another bolt, you would twist this left to pull it out, you twist these right to pull it out on the ring gear. Like I said, they're 74 foot-pounds. I put a little blue Loctite in there just for extra measure. And then that's basically it. You do have to swap the gear that drives the vehicle speed sensor on the back side of the diff. You have to pull that off of your other diff and swap it over to this one. I don't know how expensive they are or how ready available they are. Maybe you can just buy one. It's kind of a pain to get off of there. So maybe you can just buy one and then just tap it onto this one. It is a little hard. You just got to be patient with it. Don't just try to hammer it on there, because you will chip the teeth or break the teeth on it. That's pretty much it. Then yeah, after getting the shims and the bearings on here and my speed sensor on and getting my ring gear bolted on, I got this thing set down in there, and then basically I just have to get this assembly basically go in reverse of how I removed it. Take all my gears and my selectors and kind of just finagle them down into their holes as one unit together, and then I get my reverse selector back in and my other gear selector back in, and then silicone up the trans and slap it back down on here. It's a kind of a pain to put back on too sometimes, because it has all these holes throughout it, and they all have to go like into the ends of each one of these shafts. So it's like if one shaft is not lined up perfectly, this case will just not set down. It's taken me 30 minutes before just to get the top half of the case to set on the lower piece. But you just gotta take your time. One thing I want to mention too is this here is going to have shims under it. When you take out all your shafts, your shift shafts and your input and counter shafts, there is shims underneath the shaft on this bearing. Don't lose those shims. You have to put those shims back. They're not on there right now. I've got them set somewhere safe, but there's shims under here. Don't lose those. Sometimes they get stuck to the end of the shaft. They're on the end of this one here. Sometimes they get stuck on there, sometimes they stay here, but just make sure you don't lose those. And then yeah, just kind of go back together and get this case set back down on there. You gotta, like I said, sometimes you gotta wiggle it just to get it to pop back down. And don't forget the snap ring. When you're going back down, you have to do the same thing with the snap ring. You have to have someone spread it apart with some pliers while you set it down until it pops over that bearing, and then you can release the snap ring and it will lock into that groove. And then it's pretty easy from there. Alright guys, I got the trans back together. Just want to give you a quick view of kind of how it looks assembled. Obviously we have our differential over here, input shafts and counter shafts in here. Both of the gear shafts and all three of the shift fork shafts all have to be set in the trans as like one unit. So you need to, like, I think I mentioned that before, just a little earlier, but basically you need to just take your hands, put them around all the shafts, and kind of get them all plopped down into their placement, all as one unit basically. Then you can get your reverse shaft in. Like I was saying, that bolt on the outside of the case, when you're pulling the case off, the bolt that goes in the reverse shaft is that. It threads it right in there. It comes through the top side of the case and into that shaft. So that's why you need to remove that bolt. So you can go ahead and put your reverse shaft in with your reverse gear on there. Here's your reverse selector arm. Just two 10mm bolts here. And then here's your actual shift selector. It's got a 10mm here, a 10mm here, and a 10mm right there. Basically you just want to make sure that all of your shift forks, with three here, are they're kind of like a C shape, and you want to make sure your shift selector gets in between the groove of all of them. And then you also want to make sure your shift selector, there's a little arm down there that goes in between a little, like a C channel, and then there's, this one's gonna be hard to see, but there's an arm down here that goes in like a little C channel. You want to make sure that gets in there, that gets in there, and then this gets in this channel of all the shift selectors. There's a magnet here. I usually take that out, clean it off real good, because there's usually some metal on it. I don't really touch this plate, that just stays there. But yeah, that's basically it assembled. Just get those tightened up, get the three on here tightened up. Make sure all your little arms on your selector are in all the little channels so that it shifts through the gears. One thing you can do is put like a screwdriver in the end of this and just go in and out and back and forth and make sure all the gears actually work. But yeah, that's pretty much everything to assemble the inside. Basically, it's just now putting the case back together in reverse order of how you removed it. Just get you some silicone on here, get your top case, set it on there, and then just make sure it gets all the way down. All of these go in a hole in the case. Like I said, it's the bearings, all the shift forks, they all have like a hole in the top side of the case they go in, and sometimes it can be a really big pain in the ass to like get everything lined up perfectly for that case to set down. You just really got to wiggle it all around until it just plops into place, and then get all your bolts around in. Put your bolt in through your reverse gear shaft, get your snap ring in the top case into this bearing there, and then just get all your plugs put back into everything and should be good to go.